Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Whitney. That's good. But to be fair, good things come to those that wait, and we've had a great process. You know, I just want to thank Speaker Hughes, Mayor McAdams, and Mayor Biskupski and her administration for this. This is a great way for us to lead out, and I want to welcome you all here. The next steps that we take to helping those experiencing homelessness are important ones. When we selected housing and homelessness as a priority topic 7 months ago, we did not expect to be at this crossroads today, but as September closes, a plan is imminent and badly needed. We are here today to say the city, the county, and the state are on board with a long-term proposal to identify and build new resource centers, 4 in total, no one bigger than 150 beds. The plan that we recommend for public process has 2 components, and they are as follows. Number 1, additional shelters utilizing state funds. The 4 resource centers with a total of served of 550. No population over 150 beds, and the shelter populations focused by category so that the services can be targeted. And number 2, the housing component utilizing city funds. Long-term, the city commits to more than $4 million of additional money to affordable housing development in the city, and will dedicate at a to-be-determined percentage to transitional very low-income housing. We applaud the actions that were taken yesterday to help clean up the Rio Grande area. It's a good step, and the council thanks the partners that are all involved. And speaking for the council, I wish that all of them were here. There are 6 other individuals that are as committed as the 4 of us are here today, and I just want to applaud them and give them my appreciation for their hard work on this. And I'm going to turn the time over to Mayor Biskupski.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. Yesterday in the Rio Grande neighborhood, we saw what happens when leaders come to the table and make difficult decisions. The residents of Salt Lake City expect and deserve to have that same level of commitment from their elected representatives when it comes to the site selection process for the new homeless resource centers. Today, the City Council and my office have come together and reached an agreement to work together to identify and build 4 new resource centers in the city. This work will undoubtedly be difficult, but we are in this together and can make better informed decisions reflective of the needs of this city when we work together in the spirit of serving the public. I also want to add, as a city, we should be proud that we are engaged in a rigorous conversation, not on if we will help those who most need our assistance, but how we will help those in our community. Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn the time over to Ben McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for coming today. As you've seen, this week has been a series of unprecedented collaborations between the city, the county, the state of Utah, and that collaboration continues today. Collaboration is never easy, and finding consensus takes time, and you've witnessed firsthand some of that today. But what's happened is we've been working together. We all have different perspectives, we have different priorities, and different points that we feel strongly about. But we have come together around a recommendation that we believe meets all of those priorities and perspectives that we each bring to the table. I want to give a special thanks to Speaker Greg Hughes, who has been a driving force behind some of the revenue that's made these decisions possible, but also for his deference and respect to the local process at the county and city level, and his willingness to support our efforts and encourage our efforts, but to allow those efforts to play out at the local level and involving our residents and constituents, and that's real leadership. Thank you, Greg. This recommendation today is a proposal that Salt Lake County supports. These new facilities, and consistent with our collective impact effort, our collective impact goals are that we move away from a system where homeless services are primarily focused on emergency shelter, and instead refocused on delivering the services to individuals to help them to overcome their root causes of crisis and to move them to stability and self-reliance. And change is difficult, and change takes time. And that's what's happening right now. These facilities that are being recommended, these 4 facilities of a size no greater than 150 beds, is consistent with the goals of collective impact. And those are the goals of focusing on individualized populations, looking at their root causes of crisis, and helping to move those individuals, as I said, to stability and self-reliance. And this recommendation can accomplish that. So I applaud the City Council for working collaboratively to come forward with a recommendation that balances their goals of creating facilities that can integrate into a community that are different than the facilities we see today, but cannot be disruptive to the root communities. And that's really one of their primary focuses. And it's consistent with the county's efforts of addressing the root causes of homelessness. As we saw yesterday, the system we are moving forward with is one where we are focused on delivering to people in crisis treatment for their root causes of crisis. That was the focus of the law enforcement action yesterday, and that's the focus of, as we move forward, not only in the immediate sense, but as we move forward to reform the system, that's our focus. And that's what we will accomplish as we move forward with this plan. The next steps will be, of course, to move forward in preparation for the legislative session and our hopes for additional state funding to help us to continue to move forward.
I want to thank our mayor, Jackie Biskupski. I want to thank the council and James Rogers, the chair of the council, the whole city council. I want to thank our county mayor. Public servants are coming together. And again, as it's been mentioned, it's not easy. We can stand in these halls of power and we can talk about issues and policy in a very philosophical way. I think where this became almost more of an emotional urgency for me was just last week. We were holding a committee hearing, Executive Appropriations Committee hearing at the Capitol, and in real time, while we were talking about this very issue, people are being stabbed, and there's crime going on in this very area, and people are suffering in real time. And when you watch the kind of effort and the kind of collaboration that took place yesterday, there is no time to slow down that momentum. And my fear, watching that going on, was the thought, what if this is just a pause? What if this is a great start, but we as public servants are not taking that momentum and running with it? You have, and it's why this press conference is happening today, you have public servants who absolutely care about those that they represent and they serve. And it's not easy to change. And we've said this, and we said this at yesterday's press conference. If it's impactful and it's easy, somebody else got to do that. Some other council, some other legislature, some other county got to do that. If it's impactful, it's inherently very, very hard. And that's what we're in the middle of right now. And this isn't even the end. This is just the beginning of the difficulty in terms of citing 4 service centers, 4 places that will take people that are vulnerable in our population and put them, a center for women, a center that will more narrowly focus the helps and resources to slingshot people into a better trajectory. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it together as a state, a county, a city. And again, I am so proud to work with these elected leaders, these public servants. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to have a lot of good to show for this. And I'm just honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
What about the 4 centers that have different goals?
That'd be great.
Yeah, so the council feels strongly, and we support their recommendation, that one of those facilities will be a standalone facility for vulnerable women. The other facilities, we're looking at really the trends and the numbers of the population that are in shelter currently, so we know that there will be distinct facilities, but we'll have more information on the primary focus of each of those other facilities at a later date. One focused on, but men, we know that men and single men and working adults and families are some of the core populations we're focused on. So we'll have further refinement to the numbers and the population served from the county, as the county is the largest funder of the services, and we're mapping this data, so we'll have further information on those facilities. But what we have agreed is that one of those facilities will focus on vulnerable women as a standalone facility.
With the new configuration, is there any expected change to the timeline or the funding?
We're looking at still the same timeline. We know that we're up against a deadline. We want to come back to the legislature with with our ducks in the row. We do know that I think it's intuitive that, as I've said, if you're looking for the cheapest facility, the ideal size is 2,000 beds. If you're looking at the ideal facility, not cheapest, but the best one to help somebody in crisis, the ideal size is 1. What we're trying to do is balance both cost effectiveness, ability to integrate into a community, with the ability to focus on individuals and the root causes of their crisis. So we settled on this number here as that. But smaller facilities are going to be incrementally more expensive to build and incrementally more expensive to operate, and we recognize that, and that's a trade-off that we're making as we pick the size. But we do think the county believes that this smaller size will better enable us to serve the individualized populations. And so we're happy to work with it, and we'll work over the next couple weeks to really refine what that incremental cost is and the proposal to do that. But the goal at the end of the day is that we have facilities that work for the individuals who are served by those facilities, and that we minimize disruptions for the surrounding neighborhoods. And so moving to this smaller number really helps us better to accomplish both of those goals.
So do you feel like the legislature wanted to be more for smaller facilities?
So when we started this last year, there was a vision. And and it's always been the case that when the state participates in efforts like this, they bring in a portion, but there's other sources. We are still in that strategy, meaning as we look at this and these 4 sites, we're going to sharpen our pencils. We're going to make sure that the cost avoidance that comes with some of these going upstream and providing these services now instead of what might have to happen later, we're quantifying those numbers and understanding. So we don't have a set number, and we're not going to assume that there's a state burden that's going to immediately increase, but we're going to continue to work together because we think that at the end of the day, if this is more effective, then we are seeing a greater cost avoidance. And so we can factor that in.
And let me,
The legislature will have to get involved and add more money to the $27 million you've already funded.
well, let me answer this real quick, because when Mayor McAdams said that we will have to sharpen our pencils and figure this out, that's real. Like, we have to be able to sit down and take a look at this. There is a ton of potential to reallocate the $52 million that's already in the mix to help with the services. And so we have to have an opportunity to work on those numbers and figure out where that funding can come from. There is no immediate ask for the state to chip in more.
Question back here. Soraya with ABC4. I wanted to know, why did it take 7 months for this to happen? It sounded like there has been an impasse between city council and the mayor. I know mayor wanted a bigger facility, but what happened
Yeah.
today? We could quantify and distinguish what happened.
Because I couldn't wait 9 months. That's why.
When Mayor McAdams presented this plan back on January 7th, before we met with the legislature, it was for 2 facilities. I mean, that's where we were. And we've been working through this process for a very long time. I think the council had to get in an agreement on the numbers that they were comfortable with. They have arrived at that, and now we are all on the same page moving forward.
And in addition to that, I don't think it was really the council coming to numbers per se. It was more of what the residents in our districts are saying. And we bring that back and we bring it to discussion, we bring it to the forefront so that their voices are heard. That's the whole point of having districts in the city council, is that we can bring that opinion to the mayor, to the council, and we can debate that and have discussion. So things evolve over time. Speaker Hughes will tell this. Any development that you're looking at, you never know the exact outcome, how much it's going to cost, what are the effects, cause and effect. And this is one of those issues where residents are coming to us and they're saying, hey, 250 really would be too large and impact my business or my home. Either way you look at it, if it's a residence or it's a business, there is going to be an impact, and we want to minimize that as a city council.
So who's going to make the decision where they go? Council said the mayor makes the decision, the mayor said the council makes the decision. Who makes the decision about what neighborhoods these might go?
It's going to be a collective. It's going to be done jointly.
When do we find out what the sites are? October 10th still, is that the date?
That's going to be discussion that's going to be carried out, but we're moving on it as soon as possible.
So we just understand, the delay here is because the council didn't come up with a proposal and have the number that they wanted? That's why
I don't know that there's really a delay. You know, we have been working very hard for the last 9 months with all the players, whether it's the site selection committee or collective impact, and we've just been working on this. What I think everyone needs to understand is that we started at one place and we have landed in another, and that's okay. You know, we all need to get on the same page no matter what so that we can keep moving forward. And now we have come to this agreement. And I think that's a positive thing, not a negative.
Yeah, I can maybe add to that. I think Mayor's absolutely correct. The public engagement takes time. And we're responding to what we hear from the public, and that's what you're seeing today. When we first put forward this proposal before the session, we had very little information about what we would do and how much it would cost, and we cobbled together a proposal. And now, thanks to the leadership of Speaker Hughes, we have money from the state on the table, which you know, you're not going to design a facility if you don't have money or any hope of money to build a facility. So when the legislature responded with a significant portion of the funding we requested, then this process that we had engaged in over the last year went into hyperspeed. And we started then looking and saying, what numbers are we looking at? How big are they? What are we going to do? And the county put forward a recommendation in conjunction with Mayor Biskupski that 2 facilities of 250 would meet our needs. And that was a recommendation that's put forward to the public. Then in the public process, we hear from residents and council members who believe those facilities are too large, and we're willing to respond to that. So this has always been envisioned as part of the public process. Really, the end goal is that we go back to the legislature in January with sites selected, and a better architectural number. So over the summer, for example, Salt Lake County retained Architectural Nexus to help us with pre-programming. In January, when we were talking about building new facilities, we honestly didn't know how much office space you need, how big does a eating space need to be, how many acres are you going to need to build this facility? And those would be questions that you wouldn't answer really until you had a realistic path to actually building these facilities. So as soon as the legislative session concluded and we had that realistic path, we retained architects to then to answer for us these pre-programming design questions. Now, we don't have architectural designs in the sense of what it's going to look like. I think that would be more of a city-led process of how these facilities fit into the community. But the county-led process was, how many staff rooms do you need? How much other rooms do you need? And we've answered those questions at a high level. Once sites are selected, we're going to move forward with architectural design of actually what does this facility look like, HVAC and other real impacts of building a facility. And we hope to have that process. It won't be completed by the session, but it'll be sufficiently advanced that we can have more than just a very rough number of what we think these facilities will cost. We'll have a better number. From the get-go, I would also say that we know our request to the legislature has been $20 million in capital funding for these facilities. And you're all familiar with the $27 million number. That's $20 million of capital for construction, and then $7 million for programming in these facilities. Well, $4 million for programming in these facilities and $3 million for some statewide coordination and effort. That's the $27 million. We know, and we knew this a year ago, that you're not going to build the facilities for $20 million, that there would be an additional city, county, and hopefully philanthropic component that would help to fund these facilities. So we'll sharpen our pencils, we'll refine a number. By the session, we'll have a better idea for what that is, and we'll proceed accordingly from that point.
So, Councilman Rogers, this morning, the council called at the news conference at 9 a.m. wanting to make an announcement about homeless issues. Then you met for almost 2 hours behind closed doors, brought the mayor over from her office. Were we basically used as a paddle to get a deal done?
No, absolutely not. And if it comes across that way, I completely apologize. You know, there are just many slips from the cup to the lip, and this is one of those that we had this morning. We want to make sure that everyone was united, and that means the city mayor, the county mayor, the city council, and of course the state of Utah. Has anyone who is a reporter here, have they ever seen the Speaker of the House, the county mayor, the city mayor, and the chair of the Salt Lake City Council all together to support something? I think this is a first, and we are united in this in moving forward. So, you know, Ben, I apologize if you all feel like that was a ploy. It's not a ploy at all. It just took a little bit longer than what we expected.
So that's my next question. House Speaker, is this unusual? I'm kind of new to the area. Is this normal for you to broker a deal? How big of a part did you play in today's announcement?
Let me say, I wouldn't use the word broker. What I would say is this. I'm intimately aware of how we put our state budgets together. And I know the high competition for finite dollars. And I even see the projections and how those dollars are arriving this year. And and my calendar's already filling up with many requests for funding and for prioritization. And the thing that you have to know about the state of Utah is we don't throw out all the dumb ideas of how to fund projects and only fund the good things. We walk away from incredibly important requests that we know would make a difference because we only have finite dollars. My greatest fear in this process is that the dollars that we were able to allocate for this effort comes over 3 years. And if we don't have measurable and definable success and something for me to show my colleagues, I have a majority whip, Francis Gibson, who lives in Mapleton, Utah County. And he is making a very strong argument to colleagues from across this state that what's happening in this city and in this county is impacting the entire state. If we were to go into that general session and not have good progress made, my fear is that those dollars that were anticipated to continue this effort might be fought after, and people could try to persuade lawmakers that there are other more critical or more effective ways to use those dollars, and the state is not going to withdraw from this issue. The state has to stay, and we have to have something to show for this. And so my sense of urgency has grown as we've gotten closer to this general session. And so I've probably have annoyed my good friends here a little bit, but I just understand the politics of putting that budget together, and I know the consequences if we don't do it right. And so this is unique. We don't do this very often, but even that homelessness initiative from the start, I think, was something that you've not seen before and something that I'm very proud of that we've been able to do. So we're just moving that forward. We're just still trying to get water to the end of the row.
So, Mr. Speaker, is it enough to keep this money? I mean, last night you told me that, there's definitely, that you want these signs, something is happening. Is what's happened today enough, do you think, that you can?
No, it's absolutely not enough. It's how you get to enough. It's how you get to the next spot. This is coming together on the plan. This is a stake in the ground. That's what you're seeing today, and you're seeing it right after such a comprehensive effort yesterday in terms of what we've called the predators or the wolves among Utah's most vulnerable. You don't want that to be nothing better than a pause in the chaos that's going down there. You need to build on that momentum. So today was important because this is the next step in many steps that we're going to be taking together to make sure that we have the strongest argument about why this is still a landmark initiative and why it helps the whole state. And so this isn't enough, Ben. This is, again, just another important step.
How many sites are under consideration at this moment? And how many are on each side? How many are left?
I cannot answer that question because we just were allocated the funding last Tuesday to put some earnest money down on properties. And our teams are in that process right now of trying to secure the ability to even consider a site. Once that process is done, we will know how many properties truly exist and where they are.
Do you have an idea, Mayor, how many, where you would like to see them? Do you envision what areas would be most appropriate for these reasons?
We are using the site selection criteria that was prioritized by the community to determine where these potential sites could be. And that's how the original list was compiled, was using that criteria. Yes, yep.
But will they be where they have been, downtown? We have Road Home, we have all these, this coalescence, or are you looking to expand, say, Rose Park, or say Sugar House, or say?
There's no way to know where these parcels will be until we can actually secure the opportunity to purchase. And we are working on that.
Where does Matt Canham live? Never mind. Did I say that out loud? I didn't mean to. Never mind.
Are all those facilities expected to be constructed at once and have the same completion date?
I don't know that we could say that because the funding has to come online, and we are in a 3-year tiered process for funding. Plus, we have to raise additional funds. So I'm not sure what that process looks like yet today.
So does the 4 resource centers still come up to a total of 500 beds?
The council's offered 550 beds.
Mayor McAdams, are these resource centers then going to look and operate any differently than the shelters that we have now?
Yeah.
And if so, how differently?
Very much so. I make the analogy to a healthcare system that you've got two different healthcare facilities. One would be an emergency room, and one's a healthcare clinic. And what we want to do is move away from a system. If you analogize that to homelessness, what we've got is right now where emergency shelters are the primary place for receiving homeless services. And we believe that's not the system we want in the future. We want a system where emergency shelters are really like an emergency room, a place of last resort and temporary assistance, and you move out of that shelter and into supportive services that help to diagnose root causes and treat root causes of crisis. And so we're moving away from one where maybe our emergency shelters are healthcare clinics. You get all your services there, and you might stay there for a period of time, and that's where you continue to receive services, to one where they're more of an emergency room, a place of last resort. So they'll look very different. What you're going to see is a focus on helping people not to come to shelter to begin with, so some prevention, so that people may not need to end up in emergency shelter. And once they're there, connecting them with the services, whatever they may be, depending on their individual circumstances. They may be there because of domestic violence, or because of mental health concerns, or because of PTSD. But connecting them to the resources that will help them to get out of crisis and get them into housing and on a path to stability. So I would say they're going to look very different than what you see today. And the first focus is to make them much smaller, because as they're smaller, we can start to focus on these individual populations better.
Similar then to the new youth center that we have?
Very similar. I think that's a great model of what we're transitioning to, as a facility that focuses on youth. In the old model, putting youth in a place where there are rampant drugs and other concerns really doesn't serve them well. It may alleviate immediate suffering, but for the long term, it's a harmful place for them to be. So as we, yeah, you're fine.
Rogers, I just wanted to say there's going to be a collective decision on the sites. What kind of public process do you expect to happen as this rolls forward? What kind of feedback will the public be?
Well, you know, the council we are determined to make sure that it's a good public process. And that's one of the strengths the council has always had, is making sure that with that public outreach in the process is well defined. So I imagine that we put options on properties, put them out there to the community, and then we get feedback from the community. We will continue to hold public hearings in regards to this and moving this forward. So does that answer your question, Matt?
Well, I guess when you put options on properties, put it out to 4 properties, 8 properties? Is it going to be a list that's winnowed down, or is it these are 4? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that's exactly what's going to have to happen, is that I'm sure that the administration will come to us and say, hey, we've identified, X amount of properties. What do you think about these properties? We'll analyze it, go over it within administration, and then we'll propose to the community. We've put options on these 6, 7, 8, 10 properties.
Do you expect it to be more than
The options? Yeah, you have to have options. You can't just pigeonhole yourself into a corner.
What's the short-term goal for Rio Grande? We're approaching winter, so what would plans be for sheltering?
That's another topic that we're discussing. We realize that there's some real needs in the immediate sense, and that conversation's continuing. So no answer today, but we are very much aware of the challenges and really want to make decisions that are based on data. And so we're working together to make sure we have the right understanding of the current situation, and then recommendations for a plan moving forward.
What's been the response on the streets down there the day after? Are you aware? Are you getting feedback?
I have to share a story with you, because I received an email this morning from a mother whose daughter is in a treatment bed right now, who has a young daughter herself, that the granddaughter is with the parents. And for the first time, this family feels like their daughter might actually survive her addiction and be reunited with her child. And so she wrote this very eloquent thank you to myself and others involved for, she believes, saving her daughter's life.
Do you have a hard number of how many arrests happened yesterday?
We do. There were 42 people that were brought in. 46?
48, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Well, there was 36.
Okay, the number is changing.
Would you like to come up?
The number is changing. An email I had read early this morning was something a little different, but 49, 30 of which were individuals who were averted to treatment beds. We already know that 10 of those individuals have walked from treatment opportunities. And that is some data that we will be analyzing.
So what happens if they walk, I mean, you offered to basically, you can go to treatment and avert the jail system. If they don't take it, do they just go to jail? Is that what happens?
So the DA's office will now file charges against those individuals, and they will end up in the justice system process.
So you offered them a deal, and you take it or leave it, and if they left it, then.
Yes.
That's 30 took.
30 went to
And so
treatment.
an additional 10 walked away from treatment, or is
Of
that?
those 30.
Of those 30. Of those 30.
So 20 now are actually actively in treatment.
And then, so then there were the 30 that were diverted, the other 19 of that original 49, those other 19 were sent right to jail? Or-
Yeah, I hope I'm not saying too much, but here we go. That's famous last words, right? So 30 went to treatment. I had the 48 number, so I don't know about the 49th, but 17 went to jail, and 1 was referred to hospital because of a health matter. And then that person will have an opportunity, the same option in front of that person, but because of a health consideration, went to the hospital.
And there are more of these diversions expected in the weeks ahead, correct?
Yeah, I don't know.
We have 6 months of funding, and so we plan to use that funding. And as people leave the system, more people will be brought in for an opportunity to turn their lives around.
And you like the way that everything went down yesterday? Do you have any reservations about any part of that process?
I think my concern is the 10 people who subsequently rejected treatment and how we continue to keep them in treatment. And as we said yesterday, it's a learning process. We're watching our data, we're tracking our data, and how do we, again, make sure that bad people who are preying upon vulnerable people go to jail and are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law? And how do we make sure that people who are sick get into treatment and stay in treatment? So we're going to learn, and we're going to watch this data, and we're going to see what happens with those who remain in treatment and how successful are we. We know from national data and local data that it is very hard, and we're not going to have 100% success. But what can we learn to make that percentage of success higher as we move forward is what we're trying to learn as we move into this new way of addressing the challenges.
So what's going to happen to Road Home? Now that you guys have an idea, smaller shelters, you know what you're going to do with that, what's going to happen with what's there right now on Reed?
Well, I can say that our hope is a new way of approaching homeless services, and it's our hope that the Road Home would evolve with us as the system evolves. What we have stated is that we believe that, I believe that facility is too large, both to treat individuals who are in the stewardship. Now, I always have to caveat, I think the Road Home as an organization is exactly what we as a community have asked them to be, and they're fulfilling their mission. We're now saying we want them to perform a different mission. And so as part of this, as these new 550 beds come online, I think you would see what would happen is we would reduce the demand for that facility by about 550 beds. Then Salt Lake County is also bringing forward some new programming. We have this Homes Not Jail initiative that's a transitional housing model that we're working, and the Road Home is the provider on that. But if we can get people out of shelter and to get them into housing and help them to stay into housing, that we'd further reduce the demand for that facility until the hope is that really the face of homeless services is completely transformed. So we're going to have to learn with them and work with them over a period of time, but the ultimate goal is to transform that facility and transform the face of homelessness until that into the new model. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming today.
Sure.